All right, kiddos, just a quick review on alleles, genotypes, and phenotypes in a Punnett squares. Alleles are different forms of a gene. We know Mendel had tall genes and he had short genes with his pea plants. We always use a capital letter for tall and we use a lowercase letter for recessive alleles. Genotypes, you have two alleles making up one genotype. So you may have a homozygous dominant genotype. You may have a heterozygous genotype. You may have a homozygous recessive genotype. Genotypes are the letter combinations that represent your alleles, or it's your genetic makeup. Phenotypes are the physical appearance from your genotype. For example, in plants, in pea plants, tall was a dominant trait. So if you have the tall allele, you would be a tall plant. Now, the heterozygous genotype has one dominant allele and one recessive allele. But if the dominant allele is present, it always shows up. So in this case, the phenotype, or the physical appearance, would also be tall. The only way recessive phenotypes will show up is if both recessive alleles are present. So, if you have both recessive alleles, in this case, that would be a short phenotype. An example problem here, we're going to cross a homozygous recessive plant with a heterozygous plant. Pointed leaves are dominant over round leaves. Use letter L. Well, if I'm going to cross a homozygous recessive plant, homozygous means same, recessive is going to be lowercase. So if I'm using L, homozygous recessive would be 2 lowercase l's. That's my genotype. I'm going to cross that with a heterozygous plant. Hetero means different. So that would mean I would have one dominant allele and one recessive. My alleles are different. When I fill in my Punnett square, if I have a dominant allele, I write that one first. So there are all my genotypes. If I ever ask, what is the phenotypic ratio? Remember, phenotype is your physical appearance. Well, let's look. I have one dominant allele, one recessive allele. Remember, pointed leaves are dominant over round leaves. If I have one dominant allele, doesn't matter. Dominant shows up. So pointed leaves are dominant, so this would be dominant and this would be dominant. These two would not. So I have, for pointed leaves, I have 2 pointed leaves. And then how many round leaves do I have? Both recessive alleles right here. I have two round plants. So my phenotypic ratio, my physical appearance ratio, I have 2 pointed to 2 round, or 2 to 2, or I could say that's a 1-to-1 ratio. What percent of the offspring are homozygous? Homozygous means having the same type of allele or same type of letter. Well, these two right here are homozygous. So I've got 2 homozygous, or that would be 50%. How many are heterozygous? Well, these two each have one dominant, one recessive allele, so they're different alleles. I would have 2, or 50% of the offspring are heterozygous.